Although the idea of you giggling is a strange one, I have to say. I don't think of you as a giggler. It's more that sort of drunken. It's more that drunken laugh into your chest is more what I would associate with you. But.
Well, there's no liquid refreshment tonight, as I mentioned. I'm under the weather, so I'm just drinking some warm water and lemon. Yeah, but
all right, okay. Well, let's get cracking then.
Yep.
Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to Tokyo Jazz Joints. This is episode 48. We're creeping towards the half-century mark. And James, I hope you're well today. I know you've been off on a little holiday, haven't you?
Yeah, creeping towards the half-century mark in more ways than one, aren't we?
That's just what I was thinking. It's a good point, actually.
For people who don't know
is this podcast a metaphor for
people who don't know our ages? Yeah, we're close, not quite there. I'm good, Philip. I'm back from a long-delayed trip to the motherland of the United States, which we can get into on maybe an extended outtakes edition of the podcast. But yes, I did come back a little bit under the weather, but I'm here to soldier on, as always, in the name of Jazz Kisaten Love. And we certainly have a lot to get to today. I believe we left off last time, though, with yet again me trying to make you jealous of various places that I visited while you were locked out of the country. Are we starting with that, or are we starting with some of your recent Irish news as well?
I mean, in actual fact, this was almost nearly episode 47, actually, because all those wonderful stories that I enjoyed so much last week. We had a bit of an issue with the sound files, but between Brian and I in a frantic WhatsApp chat, we managed to rescue them and recover. Otherwise, it would have just been you talking to yourself, which I'm sure probably you would have listened to, but I don't know how popular that would have been otherwise. But anyway, news. I've not got as much exciting news as you. I know that you managed, even in the motherland, as you call it, the motherland, you discovered a jazz joint there, right?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Purely by choice, by accident.
Well, very much by accident, because I was not in my old hometown in New York City. I was in rural Northern Virginia for a wedding, and taking a walk through the town of Winchester, which doesn't have a lot going for it beyond Civil War memorabilia, and I will definitely leave it at that. But I came across a very old hotel. And, I've got the jazz radar after all these years. I could see from a distance the sign hanging out from one of the first floor windows, and it said half note. And, that could only mean one thing. You see something called a half note, it's going to be a jazz bar. So I popped in. Unfortunately, they only have live music on the weekends, and this was too early in the day to really get in for a drink. It wasn't really open yet, but there was a whole bunch of pictures up, and they've got a corner with a piano and a drum set. And, it was kind of shocking, Philip, because, the town of Winchester in Northwest Virginia, maybe 10,000 people tops, and yet they've got this really kicking looking jazz bar. So I took it as a sign from the gods that I was in the right place, because wherever I go, I happen to run into these kinds of joints. So next time I'm back for a family gathering, I will get the full scoop for you.
Well, I've always said you're a magnetic personality, so you do attract these things, don't you? In Ireland, no such excitement for me, really. Looking out the window there, it looks a bit like a Christmas film here. It's unseasonably cold. People don't know what to do with themselves because the temperatures drop below zero. My car looks like it hasn't been moved for quite a long time. It's covered in a thick layer of frost. But a load of people braved the conditions on Wednesday night there. We had the final listening event at Rattlebag on Wednesday night. And another full house, played some nice tunes. I think you would have appreciated some of them. Did play a couple of McCoy Tyner tunes just in your honor. Gave you a shout out, of course. One of the ones you suggested.
Oh, fantastic.
And then also Search for Peace from the Real McCoy album. So again, a lot of love for the project. I also mentioned that we had some news coming as well, which hopefully we'll get to in this episode too. Other than that, I popped down to Sound Advice Records yesterday to pick up the new copy of Wee Jazz magazine, which is out. It's a tribute to Black Jazz, the Black Jazz record label, iconic label from the early 70s in America, of course. And I'm happy to say there's a little short story in there about based on some of our trips and travels, particularly up in the north, and a few more photos from the project. And that's the last of the 4 photo essays in Wee Jazz. There's been one in each quarter this year, which has been a fantastic privilege for me to be involved with such a great project. And it's so amazing to see, like every so often on Instagram, Wee Jazz magazine's popping up, and you can see it's being shipped all over the world. Like, so every other country it seems to appear in, people are posting about it on Instagram. So fantastic. If you haven't checked out that Wee Jazz magazine, get on to Wee Jazz Helsinki on Instagram, and you can order all their stuff from their website or from the Bandcamp site. So
certainly
worth checking out.
Making our way through Scandinavia. We've got Finland. I think we've got not hit Denmark yet for some PR, but it's on the list. So I'm not sure the Finns like to be called Scandinavians though. So I don't want to get into that whole political minefield. If I'm not mistaken, I think they don't. It's not officially part of Scandinavia, so we might have to edit that bit out just in case. Oh, I always thought geographically is at least, but okay.
But
I'm not up to date on my northern European geopolitics. I apologize, but
there's American geography skills coming into play again.
In any case, our project is being spread around more and more. That's the most important point.
That'll do. So here, listen. Talking about snow, then. You got some stories of the snowy north.
Yes,
places that you've also visited without me, haven't you?
Well, yes. Yet again, talking about as we mentioned on a previous episode, my adventure trying to change the tickets that I'd booked for your aborted journey did not work, and so I decided to head up north to the great island of Hokkaido, and. It's funny because we had been to Sapporo together when you were here almost 5 years ago. But we did it in about, I think, 36 hours, on a very long drunken
Something
night.
Something like that, yeah.
You might remember my head being passed out on the counter of Jericho at about 1 a.m. As the owners was as well. If you remember, you got a great picture of him sleeping.
He was having a little nap, yeah.
Yeah, but this time I had a much more leisurely 3 days, and of course, started out at our old friends at Jamaica, and Philip, I think I did tell you this offline. Jamaica, of course, is home to one of the largest record collections we've seen in any bar in Japan. 15,000 records. Now the master, of course, had passed away about 10 years ago. Now it's run in the daytime by his wife and at night by the daughter. The daughter, she gave us a little bit of a frosty reception when we visited the first time, but I was very pleased that she remembered us on the second visit. Once I gave her my card, she said, "Oh yeah, you came here to take pictures, right?" Yeah. We've run into that quite a few times, haven't we? Remember, we were talking last week with the Groovy guy as well. But it was great to pop in there. And, I was asking her a little bit more about one of your previous research topics about women in the jazz Kisaten world. And, she mentioned that, having grown up in the place, she's never really had a lot of problems, which I thought was pretty interesting. But, also, you remember, Philip, how all the buildings in downtown Sapporo are so different to Tokyo. Tokyo, everything, a lot of the jazz joints, are very visible from the first floor. But in Sapporo, you have these giant buildings with 50, 60 bars in each place, right? Yeah. So they don't really lend themselves to people just popping in randomly for a drink. Like, you have to know where you're going and what you're looking for. And I think that plays a part into it. Like, she said in Jamaica, for example, you really don't get, if you get first timers, there's somebody who's been brought to the bar by a regular. So you don't get a lot of random pop-ins. And, so anyway, that ties in because, one of the great places I found that was new to us was Bar 81. And, when I say 60 or 70 bars, Philip, I mean 60 or 70. If any of the listeners out there follow me on Instagram, you'll remember I have a picture from the lobby of this building where I was looking for bar 81 and I just couldn't find it because on each floor there were 8 or 9 bars, all of which are roughly the same size, many of which have similar names. But when you look around and you go up there, you realize that, okay, that one's a jazz bar, this one's a snack bar, that's sort of a regular bar where people sing karaoke. There were various other record bars that were non-jazz related. And it took me maybe about 45 minutes in the same building just to find bar 81 because there were various wings, there were different elevators. It was like being in some sort of government tax office, except instead of looking for a counter, you're finally looking for a bar. Yeah, but the payoff is a lot better. But anyway, I found bar 81 and I got there just in time. It was good. I gave myself some time to wander around because, I got there right when he opened. And sure enough, I walk in. And man, the sound was just pristine. And it was just one of these tiny 8-seat places, dark, really wonderful owner. And I walk in and he just says to me, he's like, "How did you find me?" And I was like, okay, they could take that in different meanings, being lost in the building, or how did you hear about Bar 81? But anyway, we had a really great chat.
You find me.
Yeah, well, he was saying that, they don't really get a lot of foreigners in these types of buildings because, these are just very local type places. But, I explained to him about the project and the usual sort of spiel. And we had a really good chat about the history of jazz in the Hokkaido region. Obviously, he's been in the business for a long time. He took over the bar from the previous owner, and he was telling me some of the similar stories. Philip, where was the place with the guy who did all the promoting of sort of like the free jazz, like the Art Ensemble Chicago? And was that Ray Brown Master, or was that Mokuba in Guma, our friend at Mokuba?
Was it not? I don't know. It wasn't the jazz. Wasn't jazz in Okura? It wasn't that one, was it? No.
No, well, that's down in Kyushu. I was thinking somebody. I was thinking it was somebody in northern Japan.
It wasn't Mokuba, no, because.
Well, then it must have been Ray Brown then, because definitely he showed us pictures of him sort of like involved in the promotion of the events.
Oh, unless it was Mokuba, we didn't go there together, right? So
no.
I remember going there my own that time. So
we went there
because it was off the back of Tachibana, Yeah.
Well, in any case, I mean, that's a story we've heard from several people, because the Ray Brown guy in Iwate, the guy at Suga in Aomori that I went to last year, I remember he did promoting. Well, this guy at Bar 81 was telling me he didn't do promoting, but when he was younger, he used to go to a lot of the events that one of the older bar owners used to put on. So it just sort of reinforced to me like how many times we've seen the connection between people owning a jazz kisaten or bar, but also being involved in bringing over majorly famous jazz acts to Japan.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how that sort of nexus started, but it's definitely an only in Japan thing, because, I know, like, for example, in the States, promotion is is part of the business model. Whereas in Japan, it seems to be like, oh, okay, I dig jazz and I run this jazz cafe, so let me go to the local city office and see if I can get a budget to bring over the Art Ensemble of Chicago, And that seems to be something repeated, not just in the big cities, like, in Tokyo or Osaka, but we saw it in Kyushu, we saw it in northern Honshu, and now this time again in Sapporo. I was hearing stories about this.
And I think there was also that, I think in was it Lush Life? I think the guy was talking as well about bringing, I think it was Abdullah Ibrahim, I think.
Yes, that's right.
They set some gig in the temple, like they played in this shrine.
That's at the Shinto shrine in Kyoto.
Yeah.
Yes, they were doing that. Randy Weston came over with that as well. Yeah, so that seems to be something that is just really uniquely in Japan.
I think what's amazing about it is that, like, if you think about, think about the admin involved now, just doing that, and probably now in Japan as well. Like, I think a lot of that promotion it's bigger companies and, corporations, and it's all, quite corporate. But what I find amazing, maybe this is why it was so successful or so much more feasible back then, but like just the fact that like you could pin down a musician, and obviously you're making a long distance, very expensive phone call from Japan, and trying to organize all this essentially by letter and by phone, and I mean, maybe in some ways that made it easier because you had to be more effective and more clinical in the communication and get things sorted quicker. You know, you couldn't have all this back and forward by email, but like, it just seems amazing, like with the telecommunications then, how you were able to bring like musicians over for gigs and organize tours for these people.
And everything
like,
would have been
50,
slower though, because with also the distance, the time that it would take to just get here. You know, you're not going to fly in
and then get around the country
right
too,
now
right?
For just 2 or 3 nights at the Blue Note. Like, so, you know, people were doing tours of Japan for a month, you know, seeing so much of the islands. So, it was great having that chat with him. And then, you know, again, you know, speaking of sort of like patterns that we've seen develop over the course of our project, I went to a place on the outskirts of Sapporo, to a little neighborhood called Teine, and a beautiful little cafe called Wise One. Philip, you are also a Coltrane.
Nice name.
Big fan, so I know you know that that's from the album Crescent by Coltrane. And again, another in our series of older Japanese man retires from his salaryman job and opens a cafe on the first floor of his house.
That's the one, yeah.
Okay, so volume 7 or 8 of that series. And not only does he have an entire wall of records, several thousand easily. Again, you can see that if you follow me on my own Instagram page. I put a picture of that up last month. But and this was a Saturday afternoon, he is there in full crisp white shirt and bow tie, making up coffee. I mean, just a complete gentleman. Now, unfortunately, I could not get the whole story of how and when he opened. I know he'd opened 10 years ago, because even though it was a small place, it was packed. I mean, there was like 7 people sitting in there all waiting for coffee or tea. Pretty much all regulars from the little bit I did get to chat with him, because it is so far out in the outskirts. And, you know, in Hokkaido, you really need a car. So you're not going to be taking a bus or train out there. But again, just another only in Japan place, and you know, very clearly you can see from the outside that, you know, he and his family live on the top 2 floors, and he just converted the first floor into this tiny place. But yeah, Wise One was a real surprise too, because that was a late edition. I don't think either of us had that on our list, even though we went 5 years ago.
No, I don't remember it at all. Yeah.
So that was a highlight, and the last big highlight was actually outside Sapporo. Some of our listeners I know have been to this joint. It's a place in the town of Otaru, which is the port town on the northwest of Sapporo, where everything that was made used to be shipped and sent out. It's not really a big functioning port anymore, but it's one of those northern Japanese towns that's full of like really Western-style brick buildings and wooden houses, the kind you don't see in Tokyo at all, and everything's very spread out. You get a real feel of why many Japanese people often say, like, oh, you know, Hokkaido looks like America. They don't mean just the landscape, you know, being very wide open. They actually mean the architecture as well. It really does feel different.
Yeah.
And this joint, Freelance, I mean, this looked like one of these kind of old rustic cabins you would find in New England. As soon as you walk in, there is a wooden wood stove right in the entry. And again, Hokkaido, really cold in the winter. So he already had this burning stove working. This was only in, you know, beginning of November. And 2 things really stood out about the place. Philip, you're a big DIY guy, aren't you? Don't you do a lot of, like, you know, repairs around your house?
Oh yeah, I'm never done. Toolbox is never put away. Just
right.
Ready to go.
Before you gel the hair when you go out to look dandy. I know that you get the overalls on, but we've not been in a jazz joint yet that had literal tools hanging all around this place. I mean, like
handy,
including axes and other dangerous looking things that I certainly would not touch. I
feel like any other country that would be a really risky thing to have in a bar, but it feels like in Japan it's okay for some reason. I don't know why, but like I can imagine if you had axes hanging up in a bar here, it would not end well.
Well, you've got the wood burning stove, you've got the tools, but then you also have posters for the upcoming Short Film Festival of Sapporo 2023. And Daido Moriyama, a very famous Japanese photographer, he's got a huge poster of Moriyama-san. And on the second floor of this kind of cabin, it's sort of a gallery space for photography, for people doing small music events or spoken events. So the owner is obviously very involved in the artistic community of Hokkaido. It was really, really interesting. Yet again, unfortunately, conversation didn't happen because he is very hard of hearing. Could really only take an order for coffee when he was looking right at you and me speaking very loud.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it was a bit unfortunate. We couldn't, really chit chat together, but it was a really fascinating place. I've never been in a kind of like rustic cabin type of jazz joint before, and certainly not one that combined like a very rural feel, but with also, but with also this kind of, urban city type of artistic gathering place. So anybody that heads up to Sapporo, take the train out to Otaru. It's definitely worth a walk around and freelance. Philip, when you get back for your next visit, I'm definitely sending you there because you would love it.
Yeah, I think like we talked about possibly going there before, but I mean, to me, that's really interesting to hear that because, it's a throwback really to that idea that, a lot of jazz kissa, particularly in the 60s, became very much like cultural and countercultural spaces, right? They were hubs for artists and writers and thinkers. And jazz was kind of the soundtrack to that. And I think that's fascinating to hear that. I mean, that's definitely going to be on the list when I get back next year. So we'll be making that trip, or at least I'll be making that trip up there to go check that place out. So yeah, fascinating. But listen, James, I think it's time maybe to get to the, I know how you love a breaking news, and this is not breaking news for you or me, but it's certainly breaking news for the listeners. And we've been teasing at this a bit the last couple of weeks at least, and certainly we referred to it in our previous episode there in episode 47.
Get that drum roll edit in.
I'll have to get Brian to edit in a drum roll, but I mean, it's kind of hard to believe that we're finally doing this episode. And you last week referenced, the question that we've probably been asked most by people in the project. Now, if it was the jazz joint owners, it's probably, have you been to Basie? But if it's anyone who's familiar with the project, like people who have been listening or people who have contacted us online, or indeed people I've met in person that have come to exhibitions and things like that, it's always, are you going to do a book? And I'm very, very excited and nervous and happy and thrilled to be able to say that we are officially putting out a Tokyo Jazz Joints photo book, which is going to be published in spring 23. So not that long to wait. Late spring 23, that's next year.
It sounds very, very near, considering we're mid-December. Wow.
It feels very near, but yeah, it's coming out, James. And you and I have been back and forth a lot over the last month or so in particular. And I just want to share, I suppose, with the listeners in particular, like how this has come about. So this is something that we didn't start the project with an intention to do. As you know, like I kind of pitched it to you. We went to a couple of places, then it became 20, then it became 50, then it became 100. And at no point really was it like, let's do a book. But obviously, as the project has evolved and continued and more people have seen the photographs, it's something that we've been thinking about doing. But as always, of course, the cost is one of the big barriers to a book. And I think for me as well, particularly from the photography side of things, I really wanted to make sure that we did it properly. There are lots of ways to put things out there and get things done. But I really wanted to make sure that we did it properly, to do the photographs and to do the project itself justice, and to make sure that people heard.
For sure, because, like you said, we didn't go in with the goal of it, but over time, you did various exhibitions. We got a lot of good PR coverage in various magazines and blogs and whatnot. And I think that, maybe in that sense, COVID was a small blessing for our project, because even though we had to stop going to places together, we started the podcast and we started really thinking about, okay, if we are going to do a book, like you said, we want to do it right, want to do it correctly. We don't want it to be a half measure, and we want to wait for the right opportunity. And lo and behold, the right opportunity came, maybe a little faster than we expected, to be honest, based on a...
Well... Yes and no. I mean, I think I've got mixed feelings about that, but I mean, here's basically how the story went. Back in March, I thought, you know what? If you don't ask, you don't get. So I put together a PDF, and it was an explainer about the project, some images, a few stats about the podcast, and so on. And I actually sent it out. I looked around at different publishers and tried to find publishers that I thought would fit and the book would sit well in their catalog. And I sent out about 20 of these PDFs initially, and I had a list of another 20 or so as backups. And I heard back quite quickly from one or two, some small publishers, some bigger publishers. This is sort of the way I'm reliably informed, that with any of these things, particularly with bigger publishing companies, it goes in what's known as the slush pile. So you've got this pile of proposals and submissions sitting in a tray, and somebody in the company eventually gets to them. And I sort of put it out there, heard back from a few, a couple acknowledgements, and then had sort of forgotten about it. Summer took over. Other things got in the way. And then just out of the blue, I was on holiday in September. Surprise, surprise. And this email dropped in the inbox from a German publisher. And the publisher is Kehrer Verlag. That's Kehrer Verlag, Verlag. And they're very, very highly rated, renowned German photo book publisher. And it was from the owner, Klaus. And he simply was saying, I've just come across your proposal. Looks like a really interesting project. Do you want to have a chat? You maybe already have found someone else. And I was like, well, no, I think let's have a chat. So got in touch with him, and, we had a very positive initial meeting, and it seemed like he was quite keen to publish the book. And so subsequent meetings were had. We discussed more and more around the book and the concept. And I'm delighted to say that a couple of weeks ago, I signed that contract. And so the book is coming out. It's going to be a print run of 1,500 copies initially, and hopefully more. It's going to be 168 pages, nice hardback cover, which you'll be able to see in very good time, and also about 120 or so color images from the project. And then, of course, there'll be a little bit of text from yourself and I, James, and a few acknowledgements and so on, some captions on the photos, and it's going to be a thing of beauty. And it's also going to be the culmination of a lot of work, James, a lot of money that we've spent, a lot of time that we've spent together in each other's company, a lot of time we've spent online chatting shit on the podcast. And it's hard to believe, isn't it?
I mean, completely. When you think about, when we started, like you said, and we just went to, that first time going to Pithecanthropus, and now we've reached over, 160 places visited, and that all of these places we'll be able to take images from to put into the book. And, you forgot to mention, this is the first hardcover, proper coffee table photo book to introduce the jazz kisaten world. There's been a lot of other, magazine type special, edition, photo collections. But this coming from our publishers in Germany, this is a really, really, big step for us. And the fact that we were able to get to this point after all these years, and quite a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of money spent, a lot of time spent, a lot of beers drunk. Now, Philip, though, there are a few things that we do need to share with our listeners about the project, and I think it's best if we do this almost pulling back the curtain a little bit, repeating the exact conversation that you and I had. Now, some of our listeners may know, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm not always up to date on certain online trends and, new technologies and things like that. It takes me a little bit more time than, others to get a grasp of it. So
no one will dispute that. No one will dispute that.
It's controversial. But there are a few important points that we need to share about this project, and that involves basically getting our listeners kind support. So I think it would be good if you introduced exactly how that's going to work over the next 30 days.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm not sure anyone wants that curtain pulled back, by the way, to watch us, you and I talking in a cupboard, talking to each other. But anyway, regarding the project, yeah, so absolutely. I mean, I think, a lot, like you say, we've put a lot of time and on our own money into this project. So it's time to ask for support from the audience of the project, wherever you are in the world. And this is the purpose of the second part of this podcast for sure, because the book is going to be a co-funded model. And this has become increasingly common now in the, photo book world. Cara Verlag is a fantastic publisher. And I knew straight away it was the right fit for the project. They're very keen on the project itself, the images, and it really feels like a collaboration. But timing's never always been my strong point, James. So we've chosen probably the most expensive time possibly in history to publish a book. But it is a co-funded model, and a lot of photographers are working this way now. We get the fantastic support of Cara Verlag. We've got their design team working on it. Also, they're going to be doing, of course, a lot of publicity for us, selling into bookshops and other places like that. But in order to make this book a reality, we need to match some funding in order to make it happen. And so with that in mind, what we've done is start a Kickstarter project. With that in mind, what we've done is we've created a Kickstarter project, and that's going to go live. Well, it's live now if you're listening to this podcast, but it's going to go live on Sunday morning. That's Sunday, the 18th of December. And it's going to be live for 35 days, just to give you a few extra days in case, you're a bit inebriated over Christmas, or you're busy talking to family that you don't really like and you have to spend one day with them a year. It's going to be live for that amount of time. And obviously with Kickstarter, if you're not familiar with this, and I know this is something you really struggled with, James, among many others, was obviously with Kickstarter, it's all or nothing. So we have a goal. We've got to match that goal. And we're really hopeful that we can get there in the 35 days. If we don't get to that goal, unfortunately, then we don't get any support at all financially. And we're back to square one. So we're really hoping that everyone that listens to the podcast, people that contact us online, anyone that's familiar with the project, friends, families, people in the street, random strangers will jump in and support the project and get us over that goal so that we can make this book a reality. Now, James, when I told you about this Kickstarter, it was very evident straight away you had more or less no idea what I was talking about. So ask me any questions you want, and put yourself in the shoes of a listener who's not familiar.
I was familiar with Kickstarter, but having never really used it, one of the things that was, it was a big question for me. Now you've explained that there's a goal in mind, and there's a time frame. But I think that one of the things that was confusing is that it's not just an open sort of call for, a donation or support. You can give certain tiered amounts that are recommended, and then you'll receive some sort of, present up and including a copy of the book. So I think it would be a good idea if you explained exactly how that system works, because I do know for certain people of our advanced ages, kickstarting and crowdfunding, these are kind of new things that many people haven't had much experience with.
Fair enough. And I'll be honest, when I was building this project, I was definitely learning a little bit myself. I got a little bit of help from a couple of contacts, which was a fantastic boost. And we've also got a fancy little badge on the Kickstarter, which is a Projects We Love badge, which hopefully means that it will float up to the top and a lot more eyes will be on it. But essentially, when you go to the Kickstarter page, and we'll share those details at the end, you are buying a book. It's as simple as that. So we're not looking for money so that we can create a book. The book is in the print catalog. It's gone out to all Cara Verlag's distribution around the world. The book will be coming out late spring 23. Obviously, we can't say exactly when because it depends on when the proofs are ready and so on and so forth, but certainly be out before the summer. And when you go to the Kickstarter page, basically, if you make a pledge, you will get something for that. So, but the basic reward will be the book, right? So you're going to get a copy of that book, and you can then go up different tiers. So the idea is you buy the book if that's what you want, and of course that ships anywhere in the world. There's a certain number of those available, and then as you go up through the tiers, you can donate a bit more. Now we know it's a tough time for people. We know obviously that everyone's pinching pennies a little bit, but what we're really hoping is that, you know, some people will maybe find a little bit of extra cash to help donate and support the project. And for that little bit of extra cash, you can get different kinds of rewards. So I'm just looking at the preview now, and obviously,
well, this is the exciting part. Yes, I was quite thrilled to see your descriptions of this. So let's dive into that.
So as you go up through the pledges, you know, you can get the photo book. Then if you want, you can get it stamped. We have this beautiful Tokyo Jazz Joints Hanko, and you get a signed copy, and it's also numbered as well if you go higher up in the pledges, which means, you know, that it has that number on it. So you can be guaranteed that it's the first edition and it's the first print run. And then as you go higher up, thanks to Inspirational Arts, which is the last word in fine art photo printing in Ireland, they're going to do some prints as well that are going to accompany the book. So if you want a print of an image from the project, which will also be limited edition and numbered, that'll come with the book. And then when you get into the higher numbers, you can get your name printed in the book as well. So we are really conscious of how much people have supported this project. We're conscious of all the love and encouragement that we get from around the world. And one way to acknowledge that would be to have your name, for us to get your name in that book. So obviously that'll go out in that first edition. It'll be shipped around the world, and your name will be there as a thank you and an acknowledgement. And then, James, I mean, probably this is, if I didn't know this project and I didn't know you, this is probably the one I'd be going for. So when you get up into the top end of the pledges, you get the true Tokyo Jazz Joints experience. So not only do you get the book, get your name printed in the book, it's a signed, numbered photo print that comes with it, but also, James, I mean, hold on to your seats here. If and when you're ever in Tokyo, whether that's because you live in Japan and you fancied taking a trip up in a Shinkansen, or whether you're visiting Tokyo from overseas, this tier or this reward includes a tour with the one and only James Catchpole of 3 of our favorite Tokyo Jazz Joints. And you're going to take those people around, James. You're going to open up that world for them. You're going to show them all the places that we've been to photograph and the places that we talk about on the podcast. I mean, who wouldn't want that, right? I mean, I've had it, but who wouldn't want it?
With that as a present, I would assume that we'll reach our target within a couple of days. I mean, you know, who could resist?
Possibly less.
And you know, and not even just all the great jazz joints. You'll get to experience all the extra bonuses. Fast walking, beautiful blue shoulder
swinging
bags, repeated bathroom visits in the jazz bars after a couple beers, and you know, maybe even if you're lucky, a little bit of baseball chat. So I mean, there's just so much to sell it on. But no, Philip, seriously, I think that you know, this is something that we should really emphasize again and again. We're so happy for all the support that we've received up to now. And, you know, coming now to ask for just a little bit more and to really, you know, I think one of the differences, and you hinted at it, is that many of these types of projects, after you told me about Kickstarter and, you know, I looked into it a little bit, you know, a lot of people do projects or they do Kickstarter fundraising for projects that they're about to start. And the difference here is that we've already completed ours, or at least phase 1. We've been doing this for how many years now? 8 years?
It's seven. Coming up for 8, yeah.
Coming up to 8. So, you know, we've already put in so much effort and so much time and love and passion into the project that, you know, there's really, there's an endpoint really, really close. I think some people that I've talked to about, Kickstarter and these types of fundraising projects, and they express a little bit of caution because they don't know for sure. Well, is it really going to happen? Well, ours already has happened. The book is coming, as you mentioned. It's definitely coming in 2023. We just need that little bit of extra support to help us, cover some of the costs of it. And so, I think if you are listening to this podcast, you're already here at episode number 48. So you're already invested in us. We'll just ask you to take that tiny little step further and get over to the Kickstarter page and, pick which tier you like. And of course, get on over to Japan because there's so many joints waiting for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think also, it's probably worth mentioning that, if times are tough and if you haven't got enough, you don't want to buy a book at this stage, you can pledge a smaller amount. There's a minimum pledge there as well, which gets you a few postcards of images from the project and a beer mat that we designed as well for the project. And similarly, if you have got a bit extra cash, you just sold your shares on Twitter or whatever it might be. Hopefully you sold them a couple of months ago, not more recently. But if you do have a little bit of cash knocking around and you want to support the project, there's no maximum pledge, so you can pledge more if you want and help this book become a reality. It really is a dream for us to get this out, and certainly for me as a photographer to be working with Cara Verlag is also a dream. I mean, there's some fantastic photographic talent has come through their publishing and as part of their catalogue, and I was just so delighted and so thrilled to be able to partner with them. And so, I mean, it's hard to know what to say, James. I mean, when I first happened, I was speechless. It's hard not to get. It's a strange feeling because you're excited, but you're also a little bit nervous, and you want it. We obviously want it all to work out. It's probably worth mentioning as well. Part of that tour presumably will include you falling asleep at the end and abandoning the people that come on it. Just to find their own way home. Is that part of the...
Like we said, you want the full Tokyo Jazz Joints experience. So that's going to be included. And I wouldn't want to disappoint anyone. I'm actually thinking to make my own donation to the page. What is this about the Tokyo Jazz Joints beer mats? And why do I not have one of these?
I'm sure you got one of those, haven't you?
A bit of a mystery there. No, that seems to fall through the cracks. So yeah, I'm going to have to...
Secret merchandising.
Definitely have to rectify that. But no, well, listen, we've got, as you mentioned, we've got 35 days. All of this information that you've just explained, Philip, will be very clearly laid out on the Kickstarter page. So Absolutely. As soon as you finish listening to this podcast, you can go over there, you can read it in detail, you can choose what kind of level of support you'd like to give us. And like we said, we're so happy that everybody has followed us on this journey this far. This isn't the final step. It's a major step, and it's one we're looking forward to. But we're definitely going to keep continuing to visit more joints once you get back to Japan, Philip. That's right. I mean, we're not sure of dates yet, but we're looking at some time in 2023 for you to get over here, right?
Definitely, and I think also when we make this book a reality, what we'll be looking at is doing a few launch events, and ideally different places. Certainly Rhinoceros, I know, chatting with them, they were interested in maybe doing something possibly here in Belfast, and of course as well then in Japan, and maybe we can coordinate those two things, James. But in terms of that's further down the line. What we want to do is get this funding goal across the line first, and then we can look at all these other different things. And in terms of how you do that, well, it's very simple. You go to Kickstarter and you search for Tokyo Jazz Joints. If you want to find us through social media, you can just go to our Instagram account, Twitter, and indeed Facebook, and the link will be on there. In Instagram, it'll be in the bio. And also, if you go to TokyoJazzJoints.com, there'll be a tab there for book. You just click on that, we'll take you straight to the Kickstarter page. There's no excuse. Don't want to hear anybody texting me to go, oh, couldn't find it, I had to look for it, didn't know where it was. It's there, it's easy to find, we really hope that you'll get on board on this adventure with us. It's so exciting, it's so nerve-wracking, but we just can't wait to see that book, and we can't wait to start sending that out to all the people that buy it.
To spread it around, to all of our listeners around the world. I know that we've got people listening in many different countries, including here in Japan. And so if you are I know we don't have many Japanese listeners, but we do have some. Some of the people who listen to my own music podcast told me they try to fight their way through your Irish brogue, Philip. But all of the PR and social media stuff will also be out there in Japanese. I'll be taking care of that as well. You'll find that on my own personal Twitter and Instagram and Facebook pages, on my TokyoJazzSite.com, where I've got all the Kisa profiles and my podcast. So, like you said, there's no excuse. It's going to be everywhere. I know that Philip, you'll probably be bombarding us with even more Instagram stories than usual over the next 35 days. So,
obviously,
yeah, I think that we are. I'm feeling very positive. I think we're going to make it very easily, and the book is going to be gorgeous. And I might even tease. I mean, I've seen a little bit of a sample test cover. And if you're listening to this after Sunday when we've gone online, that should already be out there. But Philip, do you want to just wrap things up by telling our listeners about the cover of our beautiful book?
Sure, yeah. You'll see the cover on the Kickstarter page. Things can change, but certainly this is what it will look like. And it's actually, we chose an image from Pithecanthropus erectus, which is the first, as you'll know if you listen to the podcast, the first place that we went to photograph together and where the project began. It seemed an appropriate photo to include. And so, yeah, you can see that on the Kickstarter page. You'll be seeing a lot more of it on social media and all the channels that we have. And also what we'd ask as well is if it's something that you like, because obviously it is a photo book first and foremost, but, it's really for anyone who's into nostalgia, anyone who's into Japan, jazz, records, vinyl, travel, music in general. And I think, it has a really wide appeal. So, if you do donate and you do support the project, don't stop there, but, share it on with friends, with family, anyone you think might be interested. And we all know the power of, tagging something or forwarding something on social media. And so if you do have those channels and you do have those additional audiences, or anyone who's got a big wallet that just doesn't fit in their pocket anymore and they want to lighten it ever so slightly, please put us in touch with them as well and help us make this a reality. And so, James, by the next time we speak, the Kickstarter campaign will be launched. It will be live, and either my nails will be bitten down to the knuckles, or I'll be, just looking at them and sort of blowing on them gently, the way that people do in films when they're pleased with themselves. I hope it's the latter, but we do appreciate your support. We don't take it for granted, and we just can't wait to share this with you. And expect regular updates over the holiday season. And fingers crossed, we'll not still be talking about in January. Fingers crossed in January, we'll be already talking about what photographs go in there, about the text that's going to be in there. And we'll be gathering that list of people's names that are going to be printed as a thank you in the book as well. So, James, we will talk via different channels between now and then, but
certainly will, and I hope to be a little bit less under the weather. But it is so exciting. It's going to be a great 2023, and thank you to everyone out there listening. We are so happy to announce this new project, and it's going to be a blast. So, Philip, I will catch up with you very soon. Stay safe there in freezing Ireland.
You too, and look after yourself. Talk soon.
Will do. Bye-bye.